And joining us now is MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin, defense attorney Misty Marris, and Kenji Yoshino, New York University constitutional law professor. Guys, thanks for being here. And a reminder, we're still waiting on more Supreme Court decisions today. But in the meantime, let's talk more about this Mar-A-Lago case. So, Misty, today's hearing is just one of 5 Judge Cannon scheduled over the next 3 days, with multiple hearings on the books for Monday and Tuesday as well. One is about whether Jack Smith's position is legally funded. So, are these hearings important, or are they just delaying things needlessly?
Well, this hearing is actually so unusual relating to Jack Smith's appointment and the constitutionality. First of all, it would be normal for this type of argument to be decided on the papers. You wouldn't necessarily need a hearing. You could decide it on the briefs, and you would generally see that. You would also usually see the trial judge send this to the magistrate judge in that part. She has not done that with any of the motion practice in that courtroom. That's something that keeps the wheels moving and keeps these cases on track. That's not something she's doing. And the most unusual part of this is that 3 lawyers are going to testify as friends of the court, 2 regarding Donald Trump's position, 1 regarding the DOJ's position. And that simply does not happen at the trial court level. This is a trial court. You see those friend of the court briefs at the Supreme Court and sometimes in the appellate court stages, but not at the trial court level. So this is a very, very unusual hearing relating to Jack Smith's appointment.
So we have 3 decisions now today. A third just came down. Again, not one of those big ones dealing with abortion, gun rights, presidential immunity. But Misty, as we're watching the Supreme Court dealing with these, ultimately, I'm wondering on the immunity question specifically, could that decision impact multiple Trump cases, or is it just going to be impacting the D.C. election interference case?
It's only going to impact the federal court cases, although I'm sure if the decision is favorable to Trump, he would argue, and his attorneys would argue, that it has some impact over the state level cases as well. However, it will directly impact that D.C. case. It will be the governing law relating to that case. So this immunity decision, this is really going to be a landmark decision. And speaking about how it impacts Trump and the D.C. case, of course, it's absolutely going to matter so much with respect to that case, but it's also setting a precedent about where the line is relating to presidential immunity moving forward. So this is one of the biggest decisions we're going to see coming out of the Supreme Court, not just with respect to Trump, but with the law of the land moving forward when it comes to presidents.
Misty, on a separate case we've been following here, the Manhattan DA just responded to Trump's motion to terminate the gag order, arguing that this request should be denied, given that the trial is over, at least through the portion where they decide whether he's convicted or acquitted. We are still waiting on sentencing, of course. But why wouldn't the Manhattan district attorney be okay with lifting the gag order at this point if it was to avoid witnesses from being intimidated, et cetera?
Exactly. That's Trump's team's argument, is that the guilt phase of the trial is over. The gag order related specifically to have witnesses be able to testify without that fear of intimidation, and also specifically to protect the jurors in that case. So prosecutors are arguing that the gag order should
Misty,
continue.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. We just got one of the big ones from the Supreme Court we've been waiting on, the United States versus Rahimi. This is that gun case we were just talking about moments ago. Again, questioning whether somebody who is a domestic violence abuser and has a restraining order against them should have access to a gun and can legally have access to a gun. Misty Marris, your reaction, your thoughts on this outcome with U.S. versus Rahimi on the gun rights question involving domestic abusers?
Yeah, absolutely. So this, looking back, and just to piggyback on that point, Bruin had expanded the Second Amendment so much. That's the 2022 case that the panel has been talking about. This is creating this narrow exception, which in my mind is very, very practical. But of course, the court is looking back at history and making an assessment based on historical context and finding that historical analog that was just being spoken about. So this decision, in my view, this is the right decision. And it speaks a little bit to Amy Coney Barrett and what she had said relating to that trademark case. Yes, that we're looking at history. Of course, we're looking back. That's a conservative point of view. But we also have to have some level of understanding that things have changed over time. And this is drawing that narrow exception to this, to the rule of an unfettered Second Amendment relating specifically to domestic violence. So the decision, I'm interested to get into that dissent, though. I haven't gotten there yet, but the decision, I think, is a good one from the Supreme Court.